As you see from my brother, Vaughn, he inherited all the wonderful traits and qualities from my father. Compassion, responsibility, intelligence, smarts. He pretty much got it all. And for me being the second son, I think I kind of got shafted. And the thing you guys realize, as a second kid, you get all the leftovers. So I'm looking at all you second kids out there. But regardless, I picked up those other traits that he had that maybe weren't so great, such as he was very stubborn. He was also impatient, and he was very set in his ways. But for my aunts, my uncle, I think you know him very well, and I think you know me as well too. I have a lot of his qualities as well, but I wouldn't trade those for the world. And I'll just kind of give you an example. When I was 12 years old in 6th grade, I had this science project that was kind of dumb. You had to find 10 flowers and turn and write about it in Missouri wildflowers. And I turned it in, of course, being the great procrastinator that I was, I waited till the last minute. I only got 6 out of 10 in. So I turned in my assignment with only 6 out of 10 flowers. I didn't realize that that was the only project for the entire semester. So I got a 60% on the assignment and a better grade of D for the semester. And I got to experience my father's impatience and stubbornness and discipline all at the same time. So us boys had this racetrack set. I had these little long racetrack, rubber racetracks, and my father threatened to weaponize those against me. Lo and behold, it never really happened, but I learned that I needed to get rid of that as quickly as possible, so I gave it away to my friends. And from that point forth, I realized I gotta get my act together, and from that point forth, I got straight A's ever since. What I realized was, my father's, his impatience, his discipline of us made us who we are. So what I say is, for myself, my brothers, we would not be where we are today without his guidance and his teachings, and I love him for that. Aside from that, as you may or may not know, my father was he always wanted to be an entrepreneur. He taught us to follow our dreams and never give up. And, he wanted to be an entrepreneur. And throughout his life, he started his business. He owned a laundromat, he owned dry cleaners. He went on and tried to do a lot of things. And he taught me, to never give up on your dreams and follow them as far as you can take them. And with that, we learned a lot of hard lessons, and throughout life, people will tell you that it's too hard, it's too difficult, it's not worth doing. But my father also always persevered, and it taught me to do the same. And throughout those lessons, I learned a lot, even from the laundromat. As much as my brothers and I hated going down there every weekend for 4 years, working in the laundromat, but it taught us very valuable skills. So when it comes to washing my clothes, I can wash, dry, and fold my clothes like a champion. Martha Stewart has nothing over me. Even in his passing, my dad is still teaching us very valuable lessons. And those are lessons of being there for your family, regardless. Now, if I did not witness this experience myself, I wouldn't believe it. But if you bear with me, this happened just a week ago from yesterday. As my mom and I were shopping for his funeral supplies, we came home. And as I was unloading the stuff in the car, I walked into her front door, and my mom shrieks and she yells. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. What's going on here? So I walk up to the front door, and on her front glass her glass storm door, was this butterfly. I kid you not, it was about this big. I've never seen a butterfly that big before in my life. It was deep green, majestic, it was beautiful. It had 2 black eyes on the wings. I'm like, okay, and my mom was, of course, terrorized by this butterfly. So I'm like, well, I gotta get rid of this butterfly. So I start, shooing it away. It wouldn't go anywhere. And then so I take the mail that I'm holding, I'm like waving, kind of passing it off, it still wouldn't go. And I look at my mom and she's still freaked out. So I take it and I push the butterfly off. And instead of flying away, it lands on the ground. Okay, I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. This butterfly won't go anywhere. So as it's laying on the ground, of course, again, I'm looking at my mom and she's still freaking out. So of course, again, I try to shoot it away, it's still on the ground at this point. Still wouldn't go anywhere. And then, I start, pushing it with the paper and it still wouldn't move. Remember what I said about my dad being stubborn, right? And finally, I take it and I flip it off and finally it flutters away. And I think nothing of it. I go inside the house. And as I go inside the house, my mom turns around and says, "That was your dad." And I'm like, wow, I thought that's kind of weird. Maybe it's, my mom's kind of loopy from the drugs that she's taken when she broke her arms. But I'm like, okay. But as I think about it now, I look back on it, and it would make a lot of sense that that would be my father. Because, he was always a proud man. And if he were to morph into something, he would definitely morph into a butterfly. Because, first of all, the butterfly being as big as it was, and majestic as it was, it epitomizes my father. On top of that, too, it had this deep jungle green color, which was his flight suit in Vietnam when he flew in the war. And if he was to morph into something, it would be wonderful that he was a butterfly because he always wanted to fly, and that was his proudest moments. And I thought about him longer. So then I did some research, and I find out that it's called a Luna butterfly or a Luna moth. And if you look into the Luna moth, it's very surprising because one, for the word Luna is a Latin derivative of the word moon. And in Vietnam, the moon is a very symbolic event. And there's this holiday in Vietnam called Tung Tu. It's celebrated in mid-August. And guess what month we're in right now? Mid-August, right? And Tung Tu, or Moon Festival, is a holiday where you celebrate the reunion of family and prosperity. What better way than for my father to come home and celebrate family? And then as I look into it further, I learned about this Luna butterfly. And this Luna butterfly only exists as in its butterfly state for 7 days. Most of its life is either a larva or a caterpillar. And in the last 7 days of its life, it becomes an adult, it becomes a butterfly, and just carries its eggs away to form a new life. And that's what my father did. He's forming a new life, and he's flying away. Okay? And what makes it even more remarkable is this butterfly is a nocturnal animal. It only comes out at night. And when I read it, it said, if you ever see a Luna butterfly, consider yourself very, very, very lucky, because it doesn't come out. So what is this butterfly doing in the middle of afternoon at my mom's house, on her front door, plastered against the storm door, and it just stayed there? So it really became meaningful for me. So in closing, what I'd like to say was, Dad, if that was you, I hope you're soaring amongst eagles where you belong. And tonight, when you go to sleep, I hope you're resting in the valley of the orchids. I love you, Dad.